When the ventricle ejects, during the ejection phase, shoots a bolus of blood, 70 mL roughly, into the arterial system. And that expands the arterial system. It has to expand the arterial system because, I don't know, you have a pulse here. If you feel a pulse here, it means there's some kind of a change in diameter. And I think I still have one. Anyway, so there is a pulse that changes the arterial system. And the reason for that is, in fact, most of the large arteries are sometimes referred to as elastic arteries. And this is a cross-section through one such artery. It's showing you the structure. It has good muscle cells in the wall, which are folding out. Its internal tunica intima is covered with endothelial cells and these nice long spindle-shaped cells. It has smooth muscle, and of course it has elastic lamina. So these things are elastic, and if you inject 70 mL of blood into the arterial system, it's going to expand because they're elastic arteries. And that's part of the reason why you get change in the arterial pulse as you go down the circulation. So these things are elastic. So, this is an example of a change in the pulse pressure as you go down the arterial system, and this is from actually a dog. So the first pressure wave you see is the one in the aorta. It starts at time 0, and as you go down the system to the thoracic artery from the chest, the iliac artery, the major leg, and then the femoral artery, which is one way as well. This is what it's called. The pressure, the pulse pressure, not everything else, the pulse pressure actually increases and more peak. There's more component of the higher frequencies of pulse pressure wave. Because when the heart ejects blood into the circulation, it has this sort of a pressure wave, and this travels down the circulation at about 4 meters per second. So that if you actually sync it to the heart sound, there'll be a delay. It's delayed. And the other thing that happens is, not shown here, is the diastolic pressure. The lowest pressure actually decreases because of frictional losses. This only shows you the pulse pressure. And this is from human, the radial artery that's in the wrist, aortic pulse, and of course it shows you, in fact, as you go down this thing expands, of course, and circulation arteries branch. And the branch points, when the pulse hits it, some of it's reflected. And then that adds on to the incoming pulse. That's why you get these changes. It so happens that the higher frequency components add on, that's why the pulse is more peaked. So reflections are important. And the other thing that's important is the fact that these arteries are elastic and expand. They don't, things kind of change. And I'll give you an example of that. This shows the pulse pressure of 2 individuals. But a while ago, just human experiments, and it's from a man at 69 who's got atherosclerosis. So the arteries are now not elastic. Hardening of the arteries for the layman. They're not very elastic, so the reflections don't make much of a difference. And it's like passing a pressure pulse through a copper pipe, more or less. It's just reflections don't really add on much. Everything travels at an approximate frequency because there's no viscoelasticity or elasticity of the artery. So that's progressive right here. The pulse pressure is huge, and there's very little change as you go down the arterial system. And this is on the bottom. So that's not good. And of course, this individual is getting from a pulse pressure quality seriously hypertensive. Probably wouldn't happen in Alberta with our wonderful but there are people in that sort of situation. The other thing is a normal child, male as well. Same kind of experiment. You see the aortic arch, the depression, a nice diaphragmatic knot in the chest, a little bit of a shift. But when you get into the abdominal artery, which is down very lower of the iliac artery, which is in the leg, things become more peaked, and that's the change that occur because you have reflections and the fact that the arteries are nice, elastic, and they expand. So, too much dry whiskey and nice marble T-bone steaks will do it for you. Where else? The other thing that's sort of important in terms of the elasticity is something called the Windkessel effect. And that comes from a German term from a brewmaster. But the idea is, of course, that if you take a keg of beer, all your experts on kegs of beer, it should be, or a university education. You pump it up with some air, and of course you can then drain all the beer you want as fast as you want into your pitcher and drink it. That's called a Windkessel effect. Well, the arterial system is something similar. It's not quite the same, but it's called the Windkessel effect. The first individual that described it, a cousin or something, was a brewmaster. So that's where it comes. It's called the Windkessel effect. And the arterial system is composed of elastic conduits. I mean, the arteries are elastic. The major arteries are fairly elastic. And they're terminated in a higher resistance. This constitutes a hydraulic filter. It has the effect of minimizing the workload of the heart. So here's what I'm talking about. This is your elastic artery, terminated in a resistance. So, everything, so these kind of expand when you inject a pressure pulse full of blood, 70 mils roughly. And that's a picture of the elastic artery. We've seen this already. It has the elastic lamina, and they will expand with pressure changes. And here's what I mean. The Windkessel effect simply is this. Ventricle shoots blood in there. The major elastic arteries expand, blowing up a balloon a little bit. When the aortic valve then closes, they compress in order to give you a continuous flow through the resistance. Now, the other useful thing of the Windkessel effect is, in fact, to help or to aid the pulmonary circulation, because this occurs between pulses. So that's the pressure that actually drives blood, or the energy that drives most of the blood through the coronary arteries. Now I'll show you the picture of the coronary arteries. And the thing that amazes me is that there are cardiologists or interventionists, and they can actually hit it with a catheter, with a balloon on there, and have a stent in there, and that's very common these days for people with blockages of the coronary arteries. Not much room to get in there. Amazing what somebody can actually do. Anyway, that's the Windkessel effect. So you get a continuous flow of blood through the capillary system or the resistance, and also perfuse the coronary arteries. This sort of the last three points. Now, in general, when you look at the overview of what the circulation does, how it's organized, it supplies to all organs are in parallel. And that's to give you the maximum pressure and oxygenation. So this is the aorta, and everything else is more or less in parallel. So the high oxygen blood there, and every organ system gets blood that's highly oxygenated, and the pressure is maintained. So that's the reason for this sort of organization. So the parallel supply, there's maximum pressure and oxygenation. That's kind of important. And here's a sort of a more detailed version of this. airway beds. Now, the thing to note there's a couple of systems that have portal circulations, as they're called. That means that one organ or something is in series with something else. For example, the liver receives portal circulation. It also receives fairly normal circulation, but most of the time, portal circulation. The kidney. Part of it goes directly, but some of it has portal circulation in series, what we call portal circulation, and that's why things like the kidneys, when you have hemorrhage or something, become very susceptible because the oxygen levels become too low and it can cause damage to kidney. You get kidney failure very easily because of the fact that you don't get direct high oxygen blood into the part of the kidney. And of course, we show you all the portal circulations. There's a living branch here which is bronchial are supplied. And of course, the lungs. So they're part of the lung system or the pulmonary system. And there's the coronary circulation and all the others. But remember, there's portal circulation, which means that one organ is in fact in series with another one, or part of it. So blood that comes to it for whatever reason, and Dr. Sons will tell you the kidneys, if the oxygen has been removed partially, and these organs become very susceptible to, say, hemorrhage or some problems with the pulmonary surface, the oxygen levels are too low, you can get kidney failure very easily because of that fact, one of those facts, not the only fact. The other thing we talk a little bit about pressure. I already told you something about pressure. We've got the pressure volume diagram, the cardiac cycle. But there's all kinds of pressures in the circulation. This is my artistic representation of a cube, 10 centimeters in height, 1 centimeter square area. And we'll look at what kind of pressures that determines, so basically we're going to fill it with water. So the pressure is the force acting on a given surface area, so pressure equals force over area. That's, I don't know, 10 or something. I hope. So we're going to talk about something called hydrostatic pressure. And that's the pressure produced by a column of water in that cube, 1 by 1 times 10 centimeter cube. The formula, of course, is rho GH. This is the density of water, the acceleration due to gravity, and this is the height of the column of water. That turns out to be 9,800 dynes per centimeter, sometimes used in physiology, an old system. A more modern system used in Europe and most publications comes out to 980 pascals. Or the old system in the olden days went 142 pounds per square inch. Or when people talk about pulmonary pressure in the lungs, talk about centimeters of water sometimes, you still do. Or the old-fashioned system that we're talking about 7.25 millimeters of mercury. So you can go through all that stuff. And basically, these are the kind of pressure units that are used. So, this is the pressure driven water column. Is it important in physiology? Well, yes. Because of this, if you're laying down having a good nap, pajamas on actually, the pressure roughly at the level of the heart, so the mean arterial pressure now, remember that's the diastolic pressure plus 1/3 of the pulse pressure, will be about 95 millimeters of mercury. It will be roughly the same at the feet. And in the head as well, something in that general range. and that will be the venous pressure will be somewhat less. Now, when you stand up, the arterial pressure in the head will drop. The pressure at the heart will still be above 95, but the pressure at the feet, the arterial pressure, will be 95 plus whatever the volume or the height of the column of blood. So the arterial pressure in the leg is going to be quite a bit higher, substantially higher, depending on how tall you are. If you're 12 feet tall, you get trouble. So basically that's the arterial pressure, the basal arterial pressure. And of course the same thing happens in the venous system. In the veins of the legs, the pressure will be high. And that will all depend on the column of blood as you're standing up. In terms of when you're laying down, the pressure is roughly the same in the heart and head and feet. So one of the things that probably you've noticed, you just wrote the 212 exam. Really didn't you? And you're kind of got this little bit of a headache. When you go home and you're going to lay down, all of a sudden it's pounding. Well, the reason it's pounding is because in fact the pressure, arterial pressure has gone up substantially. Or you're on a plane flying to, I don't know, Russia. Not sure why, but you're on there. And you don't even get up for 7 meters or whatever. You just sit there for about 10 hours and your feet swell. Well, one other reason, of course, is the pressure, even though you're sitting down, the hydrostatic pressure is very high, so you're getting leakage out of the fluid, makes fluid for building. So that's the effect of hydrostatic pressures there. And summarize, hydrostatic pressures are not important as driving pressure. Doesn't matter. They're there, part of the sort of system, the way you're built. But they do contribute to the actual intravascular pressure, the pressures in the arteries and the veins. So if the body is horizontal, the mean pressures in the feet and the head are approximately the same. When the body is erect, the hydrostatic pressure reduces the pressure in the head and increases it in the feet. Same thing with the venous system, although the valves kind of play a role in it. So what does high venous pressure or hydrostatic pressure responsible for? Cooling of blood in the legs and a shift of fluid from blood to tissue, so that's called edema. So after you get off in Moscow, and your legs are a little swollen, ankles anyway, that's because you're losing fluid in the interstitial spaces because of the high hydrostatic pressure. So you tend to walk around with a long flight. So those are the effects of the actual hydrostatic pressure. And although they don't drive, it's not a driving pressure, it is a pressure that is important in terms of what happens in the legs. That's what people get sort of, yes?
Is it the opposite, like when you're lying down and you stand up really quickly and you get a head rush?
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're lying down and you stand up suddenly, why do you mention it? I was going to say. The veins of your legs are very extensive, and you lose about a liter or half a liter, somewhere depends on the size of the blood into the venous system. So you refuse the venous return to the heart. So your cardiac output drops. And old people, or older people, that's very common. You get up, go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or something, and all of a sudden you feel really faint. And that's the reason. Sometimes you faint so bad that you actually fall. So that's a common cause of senior citizens falling when they have to do something or other, because of the fact that you actually have the hydrostatic pressure pools in the veins of the legs primarily, and you don't get the venous return for a second or two, cardiac output drops, brain doesn't get enough blood for a while, and you feel faint. And some people actually feel faint enough that they actually fall. That's right, you get cooling in the legs, and that's due to the hydrostatic effect. Okay, the other thing, the other sort of biophysical point I want to bring up is the vascular wall is adapted to the wall tension, not transmural pressure. This is Laplace's law. The tension in the wall is equal to the pressure times the radius. T is the tension, and diameter per centimeter is one of the units. The pressure is in diameter per centimeter, R is the radius. That gives you equation. So basically, the tension in the wall depends on the pressure, but it also is directly dependent on the radius of the blood vessel. So this is the pressure, and depending on the radius, this tension will increase. So the idea is if you have a system, something in the vascular system where you have an aneurysm, for example. What's an aneurysm? Well, it's an enlargement or change in diameter using an artery. This is a big one. So this is an artery. And now for some reason or other there's been damage to the wall. Many reasons. Anyway, this is an artery and this is a normal diameter. And this is the loop up. So if you go back to this equation, the wall tension in this portion is normal. The wall tension in this guy here is going to be much larger. The radius is changed. It's the direct dependence on the radius. That's why aneurysms, brain aneurysms, abdominal aneurysms tend to burst. Because, in fact, if the wall tension, as the radius increases, the wall tension increases, and the vortices can actually burst. So that's the law of Laplace. And it also applies to the chambers. So if you have an enlarged left ventricle, it means that the wall tension in the muscle has to increase to give you the same pressure. So that's one of the points of the arterial system. So if you have an enlargement, the wall tension goes up substantially. If you have a small vessel, like the capillary, the wall tension is great if the radius is small. So that's kind of helpful. Now, one of the things that I read a lot about in my third paper is about total peripheral resistance. Very impressive. Anyway, it comes from some idea that, in fact, you can use a modified version of Ohm's law for fluids. Physiology is called Darcy's law or something, but it's basically physics 10 Ohm's law. It applies to fluids. So the resistance of a tube may be calculated from something. You will have a simple tube, simple system, nothing else. You're at Dairy Queen and you partaking in a nice strawberry milkshake. You can actually calculate this. And in fact, the size law, which this is, was developed that way. He didn't know too much mathematics, but he did know experimental procedures, so he did, I don't think Dairy Queen was around at the time, but they looked at tubes to measure the resistance. And he came up with this resistance of tube may be calculated from the size law, and the resistance going into this tube depends on the length. It's 8 neta L divided by pi r to the fourth. So what does that all mean? Neta is the viscosity. So it depends on whether the milkshake, Dairy Queen, or McDonald's. But in the circulation, it depends on the blood hematocrit. And if you're living in the Andes at 10,000 feet, you get a few more red blood cells, as Dr. Bartlett had told you. And if you're living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, right at sea level, probably not as much. So the viscosity of blood depends almost exclusively on how many red blood cells you have. Now, when you grow up in Edmonton, Alberta, it doesn't change very much unless you have an anemic or get into a lot of fights and get nosebleeds. Blood hematocrit doesn't change an awful lot, or else you're sick. So, if you're anemic, you will lose red blood cells, or if you live at the end, polycythemia, lots of red blood cells. So the viscosity changes, but not an awful lot. So that's this first term, 8, of course, is any number. L is the length of the tube. When you're adults, your blood vessels don't grow longer, not much, unusually. Unless you have a big tumor growing inside you, then of course you get angiogenesis and it generates all kinds of vessels. But in general, for most of us, the length of the tube doesn't change. The important thing to note, if nothing else from this slide, is the radius. The radius of this tube. And, lo and behold, the radius, the resistance is proportional to the fourth power of the radius. So it gives you an insight of how you can actually control the resistance in the circulation. Very easily. You're not going to change the 8. The local side told us what it was, and we have to believe it. You're not going to change viscosity very much. You're not going to change L. Pi is a constant. So changing the radius by a small amount gives you a large change in the resistance. So if nothing else, that's what this all means. So that gives you a way in which the resistance part of the circulation can actually control blood flow through or load the whole body by changing the resistance of the blood vessels by a small amount. Because this is the fourth power. Now here's a version of Darcy's law. It's basically a version of Ohm's law. And how you apply it depends on what you want to show. Kind of using pharmacology, for example, if you want to drop blood pressure by changing resistance, you might be able to use these kind of calculations. So basically, you're looking at the resistance. This is a game of tube, but in fact, blood vessels are not central tubes. It's shown as a nice circular tube. In reality, they're probably not. Also branch, they're fairly complex. So you need a pressure gradient, well, we all know this, probably to the extent. The pressure here has to be greater than the pressure at every flow. And flow is equal to P1 minus 2 divided by whatever the resistance is. Delta P over R, delta P, of course, is the pressure difference, R is the resistance. And this would be actually Darcy's law for modified form of Ohm's law for fluids. So here's an example. Showing you a couple of things, of course. The fact that the two circulations, the pulmonary circulation is the right side, and the systemic circulation, which is the left side, are in series. And as I told you a while back, is in fact, in order for the cardiovascular system to work properly, those two sides have to pump, or the two chambers have to pump approximately the same volume of blood. Now there is a difference on a beat-to-beat basis, but over a 10 beat stage, the volumes have to catch up, they have to be matched. As example, this one, this side pumps less than this side, and of course you get buildup of fluid in the pulmonary circulation. And if you're an error of 5 mils, 10 beats, you've got a bit of fluid sitting in the lungs which you don't want. So we can calculate the resistance of, let's say, the circulation from this side, the systemic circulation that goes through the skin, the digestive tract, muscle, etc., etc. And just taking some numbers, assuming the pressure when it enters the right atrium is about 0. Pressure, mean arterial pressure in the level of the aorta is about 100 millimeters of mercury. And this calculation just shows you how you would do it. The pressure difference is 100 millimeters of mercury. You have to calculate the flow in mils per second. There's other sort of ways of doing this where you actually take the entire cardiac output. So delta P is converted into kilopascals. Velocity, or the flow, is by 83 mils per second, so the resistance is 160 pascals mils in minus 1 seconds. So that would be a resistance, total peripheral resistance unit that I read all about in some of the cardiovascular term papers. That's one set of units. Now it depends on who the investigator is or who's doing this. These will vary. I did it in the sort of Pascal system, but you can do it in other units as well. So the other interesting thing that you can point out is, of course, you can do the same thing for the pulmonary circulation. The pressure difference is about 50 millimeters of mercury. Flow is roughly the same. And of course, you can see that this is about some percentage of this is going to be quite a bit lower. That's the way you would do it in terms of resistance. It would be a useful calculation for the effects of blood pressure reducing drugs, say pharmacology, to do this sort of calculation. There's other ways of doing it, but it gives you an estimate of what this would be. And if you give somebody a drug that supposedly lowers this, then you would just simply do the calculation and see if the effect is wool. So now we're going to move on from a large vessel, calculate the resistance. You can calculate the pulmonary resistance if you wish. That gives you a good idea. And talk about, anyway, talk about the circulation in a little more detail. The aorta is a large artery. These are all elastic. These are slightly elastic, and you hit something called microcirculation. And of course, there's small veins, large veins, and the other two veins, which actually are the large veins, superior and the inferior vein cava. All right, so this is called the microcirculation. For no other reason that you can't really see these blood vessels. If you die very well, you probably need a microscope. It consists of something called the arterioles, something called the capillaries, of course, that's where all the exchange occurs, and of course the small return vessels which connect the capillaries to the small veins. So that's the microcirculation. This is an example showing you the actual vessel. Of course, it's an artistic representation. So you have an arteriole, and those little funny little lips on there are bands of smooth muscle. You have something called a metarteriole, course, the capillaries are all these guys here. Now the arterioles compromise or make up most of this total peripheral resistance. These guys, the arterioles, receive autonomic input. Which division do you think? Sympathetic, obviously, right? So they receive sympathetic innervation. Now, the sympathetic innervation of most systemic arterioles and muscles largely, some in the GI tract maybe, receive what is called sympathetic tone. That means that at rest, as you're sitting there looking at the clock, the sympathetic nervous system is generating an ongoing effect and releasing noradrenaline continuously. That comes from a center in the dorsal medulla, and you have continuous activation of the smooth muscle cells in the arterioles. So, if you have a car accident and you damage that portion of the medulla, or have a stroke, then the immediate effect is usually a loss of sympathetic tone. And because of this, the total peripheral resistance goes wacky, goes down to very low values, and you get a massive drop in blood pressure. So if you lose sympathetic tone for the systemic arterioles, blood pressure doesn't go to zero, but very close. So you need to have sympathetic tone for normal day-to-day activities in life. If you don't have it, people who have that situation do not survive. Unless there's an MD with, I don't know, a couple of grams of noradrenaline sitting around waiting for you to go out of the car or whatever. So you have to have sympathetic tone, and you get sympathetic tone from the arterioles. It's part of the total peripheral resistance, and you need peripheral resistance. If you don't have it, blood pressure will plummet, and that's not compatible with life. So that's where the resistance, total peripheral resistance, we just calculated, occurs mostly in the systems which are referred to as arterioles. And that's under control of the sympathetic nervous system. Arterioles that we're talking about do not receive any parasympathetic, none. So, components of the microcirculation. You have the arterioles that generate total peripheral resistance primarily. Largest portion of it. Go back to that again. There's something called the net arteriole, which is usually open all the time. You have capillaries. We'll talk about capillaries in some detail later on. Precapillary sphincters, which occur mostly in the GI tract. And of course, you have venules, which are the returning vessels that go back, connect back to the veins. The capillaries are the site of exchange of material fluid from the blood, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nutrients, etc., etc. So that's where the action is, that's where the diffusion occurs. Capillary walls are usually one endothelial cell layer thick, so it's endothelial cells, 5 to 10 micrometers in diameter. Small ones. I think Dr. Barton might show you a picture where a red blood cell kind of squeezes through the capillaries. So some of them can be kind of small. And combined have the largest cross-sectional area and what I have not included, the largest surface area. But that's where the exchange occurs. And you also have pulmonary circulation is a little different. That's the lungs. The resistance is low due to the calculation. A large number of capillaries that make a large surface area, a very large surface area, 70 to 80 square meters. So if you take the length of the capillary and the diameters and calculate the surface area, it's huge. And that's where the gas exchange, CO2 and oxygen occur. The thoroughfare channels and preferential channels go directly to the inside are the arterioles and the meta-arterial, which is part of it. Still invested with smooth muscle, thoroughfare channels are always open, and some capillary beds have something called arteriovenous anastomosis, which is in the skin, and they're bypass the capillary network and that's for temperature regulation. True capillaries, that's the guys who exchange, are simply endothelial tubes, no smooth muscle, and have no contractility. Nothing. They don't contract. And here are capillaries. There are three basic types in the human. The first one, of course, showing the red blood cell in there, endothelial cell layer, is called a continuous capillary. That occurs everywhere. Brain, little muscle. There's something called one type is a fenestrated capillary. Have holes in it. That's what you're going to hear about when Dr. Saunders teaches you about the renal function, kidney. They have holes in them to fenestrate in order for fluid to move to and from the blood supply into the urine. That's one type. Another type of capillary. And finally, the one that's in liver, bone marrow, called the sinusoidal capillary, which has large holes that are like sinusoids. So blood cells, red blood cells can move through from inside to outside. So they're very large holes. That's located in very specific locations. Most of the capillaries are continuous ones from muscle, brain, etc., etc. So they're the predominant ones. This is kidney primarily, bone marrow, liver. One of the things that these sort of parts of microcirculation do is referred to as basal motion. It's not sort of heavy stuff. It simply means that the environmental conditions and the location of this vascular bed determine whether these capillaries open or close. So basically you get intermittent opening and closing of channels of the capillaries, changes the pattern of blood flow, and this is acts via precapillary sphincters. That's a really band or muscle area. They are not innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. They depend on the environmental conditions in the tissue. So if you have muscle that's working really hard and generating lactic acid, that will open up the precapillary sphincter. This, of course, is the meta-arterial, the thoroughfare channel, part of it. And that's usually open to the bypass channel. So basically, it's the principal factor of local nature in the regulation of flow and pressure in the capillary network. It's independent of nervous factors, but it is dependent on anything else that's in the circulation. For example, if you're pumping up noradrenaline for some reason, that will affect it, because it works on the precapillary sphincter. And local factors, which could be lactic acid or high CO2. Now, we're talking about the pulse wave, but totally what happens with the elastic arteries, and this is just fun. So the pulse wave is gradually damped as it moves through the arterioles, arteries and arterioles. The largest fall of pressure occurs in the arterioles, and possibly in the enhance the arterials or the major sites of vascular resistance. I told you that, and I'm telling you again. Then eventually I'm going to tell you I told you so. Anyway, this is another diagram. It's not very good, but anyway, the idea is that if you look at the mean arterial pressure as you go down the circulation starting from the aorta, this guy here, it drops because of frictional losses. However, when you look at the pulse pressure, it peaks because of the reflection effects and the fact that the system is elastic. When you get to the small artery, the arterial pulse is essentially disappears. Now when you get to the arterioles, the pulse is essentially continuous. Because the capillaries, venols, veins, and of course you get into the vena cava, the pressure goes back to almost zero. So most of the sort of pulsatility by the time you get to the arterioles is gone. It's continuous flow. And hence, if you sort of believe what I say, no reason for that, but it might be a good idea, is in fact the largest blood pressure drop occurs at the level of the artery. So that's, I conclude from that, is that is in fact where most of the resistance occurs. Okay, we'll go back and review that next page. I think I'm going to quit for now.